Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different. Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different, fan. Detroit is different, kid. Detroit is different, man. White Bay. Swedish.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And I got in studio a brother that's working in a lot of different spaces. It's interesting that I even bring up spaces because one of the spaces he has is a space that's a multi-use space. And when you hear that, you think, what is going on there? But what's going on there is a lot of creativity, and it's open for the community, and it's right in my district, the District 2, if you're from Detroit and know what that is. But if you may not be as familiar, across the street from where Marygrove as an institution is, sits this place that brings a lot of creatives, brings culinary artists in that creativity. Comedians is how I first connected there. Poets, visual artists, and many more to the raw space. Mr. Eric Cook, how are you doing today?
How you doing, bro?
All is well, man. All is well.
Thanks for inviting me, man. I figured you must have had a cancellation or something.
Nah, man, nah. Well, what happened was, so we're recording on Christmas Eve. I'm doing like a series of different interviews, but I often, I find it that it's best to record in those spaces and pockets, like on days like this, before a holiday or things like that, even though Christmas Eve in some ways is a holiday, kind of like people,
a lot of movement,
a lot of do stuff on Christmas Eve now too, and almost like chill on Christmas. So with that, the classic thing, you mentioned that you got something coming up, which we'll get into and explore. And that's where it's like, okay, you need to come on soon, because that's like top of the year.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a 5K, Connected Communities Detroit. So myself, Tyree Williams from Pillar and Pride, also a business in District 2, at least currently as it stands. There's a lot of redistricting going on, all that kind of stuff politically, but they are on 7 Mile, 10004, I believe, 7 Mile, just east of Woodward.
Yeah.
But we connected some years ago. We had tried to do a bike ride, and I think he kind of had a loss in his family, so we had to cancel that. A lot of things happened in between, so we just kind of found an opportunity to make something happen, joining the kind of communities together, Bagley, Sherwood, some of those other Marygrove neighborhoods, and we decided to do this. So we got a lot of community support, some buy-in, so just all about health and wellness. Really started out kind of me thinking like, let's do something for men's mental health, not just mental health, but physical health, because I think it all ties in together. But as we kind of kicked it about it or whatever, we just decided to do it like this. So men, women, children, it's gonna be cold, we know, but wear your warm clothes and come out January 4th, 11 a.m.
So we definitely want to unpack more of that. But before we go there, let's go to the classic Detroit is Different. Yo, peoples, how many generations deep are you a Detroiter?
I guess I would be 2.
Okay.
My grandparents, from the South, on my maternal side, South Carolina.
Okay. South Carolina, that's not a place where a lot of Detroiters make their way up to Detroit. What from South Carolina brought them here?
Work.
Okay.
That great migration, the jobs, things like that. So.
Okay. And that's unique because usually like those Carolinas, but especially South Carolina, a lot of them went New York, Jersey,
Chicago,
maybe DC.
My grandfather went to New York. He didn't like New York.
So he started in New York.
Came back here because we have family in New York. But I think that my grandfather was the third of 14, 15. So I think his oldest brother may have ventured off to New York. But my grandfather, he didn't like New York, came to Detroit. 3 of his brothers follow him here. So out of the 14, 15 of them, 4 brothers ended up here in Detroit.
So a lot of cooks.
Yeah, it's a few.
All right. So with this whole story, I guess from there, what side of town did your people land in originally that you know?
So that's funny. So that's my maternal side.
Yep,
My paternal side was Westside. My paternal side, East Side.
Okay.
So I think of myself as like I got dual citizenship.
Okay.
To an extent.
What parts?
So, as far back as I can remember, we lived on Scotton. So Scotton and Buchanan, what you might think or hear people call number streets, West Grand Boulevard, Warren, that area. That was like my earliest memory. From there, we moved to 7 Mile Greenfield, between 6 and 7 Mile. So Curtis and Greenfield on Whitcomb, right next to Peterson Park.
How long were you over in the number street? I'm from Northwestern, so I'm very familiar with the whole concept and West Warren and that whole community.
Okay.
How long were you up there? I mean, how old were you?
I probably was like 7 or 8.
Okay, so you remember the hood, but
yeah.
You don't remember like all the nuances as much.
Well, what I remember most about being over there is it was a time when the alleys, we could play in the alleys. They picked up trash in the alleys. I had friends that stayed behind us. I got to their house through the alley. I ain't walk around the corner. I was, and I'm an only child, so I wasn't walking nowhere by myself. So I got to my man crib from the alley. So I was probably like 7 or 8 when we moved from over there.
Okay, and then you move over to what neighborhood?
Well, it would be Winship. So Curtis, Greenfield. You familiar with Peterson Park?
Okay, so Curtis and Greenfield. Like when I think of that community, that's like that would be like I think a neighborhood's also like with high schools. So that's like one of those.
Renaissance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Renaissance. So yeah, and that's where I spent the most of my
most of your time.
Yeah.
Okay, in the neighborhood you remember most. What was the culture over there when you was coming up?
I mean, it was cool. We had the block clubs. Everybody knew each other. It's 20 kids on the block.
Oh, so it was a lot of kids.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then I guess from there, your peoples, what are they doing at the time for work and everything? And I'm guessing, then
Yeah. So, my mother is, like I said, on my maternal side, who I live with, and my grandparents. So, my grandparents was retired long as I can remember.
Okay.
But I know my grandfather was, I believe he worked for he picked up trash, but he worked in the Brewster projects for the city.
Okay.
My grandmother was, I think back in the day they called them like paraprofessionals. So she worked at Condon Middle School, which was over that way, number streets over that way. My mother worked for AT&T.
Okay. So this whole mix of being with grandparents is it's a movement. Shout out DAAA of they say like grandparents raising grandkids. Though your mom's more present, but you in a house with them.
Yeah.
I assume like it's some different traditions where just the connection, as I finished the interview not too long ago about just that relationship between the generations. And it's still a lot of love, but it's just culturally just so many things that need to be understood because grandparent to kid,
Yeah. And speaking of like previous interview, I was listening to Mother Bettis, and I don't know if that's the last interview you did, but it was like I was just listening to it. Kind of, she like an oracle, man, and it's so many parallels just in your
story.
Yeah, as not knowing her personally or anything like that, but I get more into that if we got time. But
that's what Detroit is.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that relationship between
grandparents and parents. So it's like one of those things where you may listen to like when you think gospel, you think of Mahalia Jackson, not Kirk Franklin. You know what I'm saying? Like just cultural. You know what I'm saying? Like
those nuances.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't grow up with like even the way that, because I'm guessing like we around the same age, so your grandparents culturally around the same age. So like breakfast for our parents was like what was Sunday breakfast for your parents was breakfast every day for your grandparents. Cause culturally, like they getting down with some breakfast. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then I had a lot of time. My grandmother really was like my best friend growing up.
Okay.
Part of the reason we moved from where we were to where we went was because we was in a small house. Yeah. And I slept in a bed with my mother till probably I was like 7 years old. because that was just
the cost and what everything was. Yeah.
So I think and I don't know the full story, but I think my grandparents, and a combination of other things, we talking, like you said, we probably around the same age, so it's probably a dynamic of what's going on just in the city.
Yeah.
Crack cocaine coming through, all these different things happening around the mid 80s, early 80s.
Yeah.
So we got out of that neighborhood, had a bigger place, so I had my own room. You know what I'm saying?
And let me explain, and then I want to talk about that.
Yeah, for
the
sure.
kid in their own room is big. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But also just going to Northwestern. So Detroit ain't really on gang culture in the 80s and 90s as much as it's like neighborhoods. Northwestern, like a lot of schools, but especially a lot of different like neighborhoods. So it's like Northwestern sits at the kind of the intersection, even though Tabernacle Church is right now next to what was, but it kind of sits at the intersection of Dexter, Grand River, and West Grand Boulevard. Yep. So it puts it like in the mix of like you got the Zone 8 kids, shout out Yusef Shakur and them. You got the Across the Bridge kids.
Yep.
Across the Bridge is also the Number Street kids. Yep. So it's like okay, and across the bridge referring to the 96 freeway bridge. Yeah. So it's like
Scott,
okay,
that's where I live.
And it's like, but they number streets. Right. So like I'm in Northwestern and it's like you gotta learn all of this. Now in it, the number streets, as people are knowing, like hence like we're off Rosa Parks Boulevard or 12th Street, then it's 14th Street. But as they pick up over to like 24th, 28th, 17th, like all of that becomes hence the number streets. And that's one of the communities that definitely was hit very hard by the crack epidemic, so much so that it's so many drug rehabilitation places still over there. And we think that it was a lot of crack, but even the heroin that was very prevalent in that community throughout that time too. So I want to frame it, crystallize it like, yo, it was getting heated, and it also is kind of like the buffer zone between Westside Black Detroit and Southwest Detroit. Yeah, it's kind of in that area too.
So, a couple things in that. We moved just before. It was not just before, but a couple years. I think maybe 4 or 5 years before the Malice Green incident. That was on 23rd.
Yeah,
that was right there on 23rd. I still got people today on 30th. So we still kind of, and we have been in that neighborhood for years. My mother was raised in that house and her siblings.
And I also want to uplift this as you talk about still having people over there. That's another one. It's kind of like East State Fair. It's like it's one of those neighborhoods where like if you're not from there, and even if you black, it's like what you doing over? Like it's a when it's like people were looking at you like, what's going on?
I ain't from over here,
that's one of those neighborhoods too.
Shout out to all my guys from that way too. From State Fair. Yeah, that's what's up though.
You know what I'm saying?
So that was a big part of that. And then it was another. As far as the high school thing,
and you mentioned the Malice Green incident, we definitely want to talk about that. Malice Green is after witnessing the murder of. After witnessing the beating of Rodney King, it was a murder of a black man here in Detroit. Malice Green was bludgeoned to death with nightsticks. Those, if anybody know, not nightsticks, with flashlights. If anybody knows, a police officer's flashlight is like real heavy ass metal.
Maybe a 10-inch foot long flashlight. Back in them days.
The argument similar to like the Rodney King is like his intoxication, and this is also an argument being made for George Floyd's murder too, was what led to the death, not the bludgeoning in the head many times. And after his murder, I believe it was the artist Ibn, and Lord knows somebody may get me wrong, that painted a mural at that site.
Yes.
And it was just such a touching story that the Michigan Citizen newspaper, shout out Michigan Citizen, covered for so long, but really talking about a lot of police injustice. And this is also, I believe, the first foray into the consciousness of like on a popular scale where Kim Worthy enters the realm into most people's minds, because in the beginning, Butzel and Nevers, the police officers,
I remember them
are
names.
set free,
Yep.
similar to what happened with Rodney King.
Yep.
And very similar, it was a lot of outrage about that and protesting. And it's so interesting because it was a gas station that sat there.
Right off
One
of
of
Warren.
the first things I remember in protest is my dad took me and my sister where we were marching and protesting about that gas station and its complicit nature of calling the cops on Malice Green. And it's also interesting because something like that just recently happened where
Off the Lodge.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6
Where,
Mile in the Lodge.
New Era Detroit is in the same way, saying like, look, stop looking at people as criminalizing every person that
Shout out
comes
to
into
them.
this space
Yeah.
to the point where they're dealing with what they're dealing with.
Yeah,
Now, with that,
they
the
shut
gas
that boy
station
down.
Yeah, they shut it down. Yeah.
I got a relationship with Councilwoman Calloway from District 2.
Mhm.
And she was a part of that. She was speaking on that a couple of days ago. But yeah, the young man, God bless, his family, rest his soul, jumped off the
Escaping. I mean,
the overpass.
for his life.
Yeah.
And is murdered
Yep.
because all over like something like a bag of chips or something that is extremely excessive in only the way that you're looking in a predatory nature. And the thought process is, if you look at the people that patronize your business to sustain your livelihood as if they're predators and criminals, you don't need to be doing business in that community. So these are themes that arc a lot of, as people say, you radical or militant, or these are ideas that have been incepted most of our lives about this place and space.
Yeah, it's a reoccurring.
Mm-hmm.
That's unfortunate.
So kid with their own room.
Yeah.
I know that's like live as ever, like getting that own room and what that space is. And it's things like that that really do show a collective of a family coming together like, okay, let's move forward.
Yeah.
And the whole family making
basement.
make that.
Yeah. Basement. You get a certain age, you really kind of, the basement became mine.
Okay.
More than anything, I collected all my CDs and tapes and stuff like that. All my Source magazines, my Word Up magazines. So, it was a good time, man. Those early, I guess, preteen, teenage years, as far as school. So when I was over in that Warren, West Grand Boulevard area, it was a school, Zion Lutheran. So that was one of the parallels I thought of with Mother Betty. She talked about the Lutheran schools. So I went to Lutheran school.
What was that like for you?
It was, I didn't think it was too much of a difference in terms of like the type of kids. I guess it was, but so I had a break from moving over there to like second grade, third grade, and went to Winship. I don't know if you remember Winship back in the day. It was right off of Curtis and Lauder. So I think I went there from like third to fifth grade. Then fifth grade, fifth grade, I went to Greenfield Peace Lutheran, which was right on the corner of Outer Drive and Greenfield. Okay. So that's not there. None of these schools is. Most of these schools is gone. Yeah.
What do you remember about that early school, other than like what do you take to, any classes, anything stand out?
Nah, not as far as necessarily classes. We had teachers that kind of cared. Not that the other teachers didn't, but that fifth through eighth grade, that middle school kind of time. A bunch of things. I still got most of my friends. Most of the friends that I have that are in my life now, I've known since then.
I think one of the key differences in a lot of these schools, and shout out, rest in peace, my mom, is it's back to like chicken or eggs, scenario of like, and Lord knows people gonna hop on me for even saying this. Does the Cass Tech student, is that person a better student? A variability could be yes, but you also have such more of an active parent association associated with some of these schools.
Yeah.
And when active parent association, some schools, it's like you go to parent teacher conference, like when I was at Northwestern, and it's maybe like 4 parents in there.
Yeah.
You go to a parent teacher association meeting at Cass, it's like packed.
Yeah.
You
talking 90s, early 90s even.
I'm talking even today.
Yeah.
But it shows because some of the presence of the parents impact more eyes on everything that's happening. And it doesn't mean that it can't be positive results from the school where the parents aren't as active, but it just shows up differently. So I do believe that some of the schools that are quote unquote better have more resources, even personal asset resources, and other support that a school that's a quote unquote bad school just doesn't have access to. Is and how things are resourced. So now let's just go your high school journey. Where you go?
Mumford.
Oh man,
Yeah.
Mustang.
Yeah. So you know, like to your point, the Cash Renaissance Kings we had to test into. I don't even remember ever taking the test. But I do remember I had an aunt and an uncle that lived in Southfield. So we talking, you know, mid-90s. I guess, you know, kind of keeping in line with some of that flight from Detroit of even us, right?
Yeah.
Everybody moving to Southfield and different places like that. But I was supposed to go to Southfield High. And we had another kind of family, I guess, issue. So my uncle had a son from another relationship. Him and his son was my cousin. They moved in with my aunt and uncle, so I couldn't move in with them, and I couldn't go to Southfield. So the lady across the street, one of my neighbors, Miss Burton, she taught at Mumford, and she was in a merit program, or there was a merit program, I should say, at Mumford. So she kind of got me into Mumford, and made that happen.
The Mustangs, what was it like? As we've interviewed a lot of Mustangs, and it's a culture to Mumford too.
Yeah.
So
just couple things. Mumford, I didn't even really know nobody. I might have knew a couple of people because my neighbor
started.
Yeah, when I started. So you couldn't go to Renaissance unless you tested in. So really, my hood school would have been Cooley.
Yeah, I was gonna say Cooley would have been that.
My mother wasn't having that. She wasn't having Cooley.
Cardinals. Yep.
So I ended up at Mumford, and you know, I made friends, everything like that. I love playing ball and stuff like that, but I didn't hoop or nothing like that for Mumford. I loved baseball, but I didn't play baseball. I think I had other issues going on that kind of pulled me away from sports, so I didn't put as much time and effort into sports as I could have or should have. But made friends, you know, got into the same kind of stuff that, you know, teens get into, skipping school, all of that stuff. So really Mumford ended up being a place where I had to leave. So I left Mumford because I got jumped.
Whoa.
Yep. So long story, got into it with some guys. And it's like you were saying earlier about that gang culture. So I think Mumford probably had every gang in the city.
I think Mumford's another one of those schools. As I interviewed, shout out to Howie Bell. It hasn't posted yet, but he went to Mumford for a start, then ended up going to King and finishing.
Okay.
But same way, he was like, I had to run out the back because it's like between Finkel, 6 Mile, Sconies, 7 Mile, PAs, like
LA.
Another one of LA. It's another one of those schools where it's an intersection. And then the other thing about Mumford, I'm gonna just be honest with you, as I went to Hallie Magna Middle School. Mumford is one of those schools where a lot of kids that get kicked out of Cass end up going. That's like it's like, okay,
Renaissance.
It's one of the better quote unquote regular public schools. So that means that from going to Hallie, it's some fine women that went to Mumford. So fine girls usually bring an energy of some a
lot of stuff.
Energy of like some of the people that's jumping you at Mumford ain't never been to Mumford, ain't going to Mumford, they just outside of Mumford. And it's like, why are they outside every day?
Yeah, no doubt.
It's like,
and Mumford had Votech.
Yeah.
So it's that really intersection. You couldn't really tell who was coming and going for real. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like back like now when you had digital IDs and you could see somebody, you had to look at their ID to see their schedule.
Mumford was definitely one of those schools where kids from other schools will skip at.
Yeah.
We going up here. It's like it's a culture, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about of the era I know, like late 90s, early 2000s. You know what I'm saying? I'm speaking about.
So you said Hallie, everybody came from Hallie or they came from Bobian.
Yep.
And Bobian had a 9th grade back in the day. So the kids that came from Bobian didn't come to Mumford till the 10th grade. So it was a mix of that, and everybody was kind of clicked up. So I ain't really fit into none of that. But like I said, I made my way. And
and upon jumping, everybody, your fam was like,
can't so it almost remind you like a Fresh Prince type of story. My father, for the majority of my life, lived in New York. So my mother sent me to live with my father, who lived in New York. So I finished high school in New York.
That's just like the Fresh Prince.
Yeah.
So okay, so now you go to New York, and this is what year?
Man, 96.
So 96.
96.
The year of it was
Pac got
written,
killed.
Reasonable Doubt.
Yeah.
All Eyes on Me and Machiavelli,
Yeah.
or as we know it more so as what he said, the year Pac got killed.
Yeah.
And you coming from Detroit, which to anybody that knows New Yorkers, and I got family in New York, like everything outside of New York is garbage. The West Coast, it don't matter. So where you move in New York and how are you connecting it?
Yeah. My old man, he lived all over New York, but at the time I lived with him, he lived on Long Island.
So Wu-Tang Clan.
Staten Island is Wu-Tang.
Good point. Staten Island is Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
So Long Island.
So you talking Long Island, I can run them down. The high school I went to, you familiar with it through probably the film Amityville Horror. So I went to Amityville High School in New York. And they
more of a white community.
It was mixed, honestly. Yeah, heavily mixed. De La Soul went to Amityville High School. Yep. So you had a lot of different groups that came from Long Island. EPMD was from Long Island.
Good point.
Eric B and Rakim was from Long Island.
They are.
Keith Murray. Well, Eric B wasn't necessarily from Long Island, but Rakim for sure from Long Island.
And Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck D, I think, is from Long Island. Keith Murray. You got a lot of hip hop,
Long Island
fixtures from Long Island. Yeah, no doubt.
And then this era, and just being from Detroit, how did you connect culturally? Just because I know just the New Yorker attitude.
Well, it was cool. I was a lot of people, they think we talk Southern or speak Southern.
Yeah.
So people took to me because I was from somewhere else. I was different. I was kind of a newer kid. So they was like interested in my culture. Plus, you got to remember a time where you're speaking about all these other things in terms of hip hop. We talking about Slum Village. We talking about Jay Dilla. We talking about stuff like that that's happening from a hip hop standpoint, where we getting not the notoriety maybe that we deserve from a music standpoint.
Respect.
But it's like, damn, Dilla is he really kind of pushed all of that forward, and it's really a time, man, when they was having collabos. Dilla, De La Soul, The Commons, groups like that. So
Raucous Records.
Yeah, yup.
And you're in the mix of this. Did you like what was happening? Like, did you like New York? Because that's another thing. It's so busy and it's all over the place. How did you connect with the city?
I didn't really connect too much to the city. So Long Island is what you might imagine, especially being from where we from, it's suburb. Yup. So we would go into the city. I got family in Brooklyn. Most of my family is in terms of that maternal side of my family, but this is my dad. But my mom has first cousins and stuff like that in Brooklyn. So we would go there and kick it from time to time, but we stayed, in our little bubble for the most part. And Long Island was just kind of slow, a little boring. So I didn't really I had an opportunity to stay. My father said, you can stay here and go to school, but I was ready to come back home, man. You got to think I'm missing. I'm graduating high school out there in '97. All my friends graduating, they going to prom, they going to homecoming, and I'm missing all of that. So I was really just ready to come home. Yeah, so I came home. My stepmother at the time, she had a friend that taught at Eastern Michigan University. So it's the only school I applied to. I wanted to go to the Air Force, but my pops was like, no, he was in Vietnam in the Air Force. And he kind of discouraged it a bit. So I ended up going to college on the Eastern.
So with that, Eastern at that time, and we've talked about Eastern on the podcast before, that like it's been different iterations in Eastern Michigan where it's a lot of black students. Like Eastern does a lot better than a lot of the PWI. I say Eastern and Michigan State, for whatever reason, black enrollment.
The HBCUs
like yeah. You can it's points in times that Eastern arcs, like in 2002 or something like that. You there and Brandon Jessup and a lot of the folks.
That's my guy.
You know what I'm
Jessup,
saying? Like,
what's up?
It's like Eastern feel like it's like black folks. It's still Eastern. You know what I'm saying? But still,
it's still Ipsy. Yeah, shout out to Ipsy.
Ford, like it's had Corinda,
I know Corinda Washington. She doing big things in DC. Yeah, shout out to Corinda.
Dory, like, it's been some imprints of some black culture in Eastern Michigan.
Keeping with that, so I got the business on 6 Mile. Shout out to all the businesses up and down 6 Mile, but one in particular, Design Studio 6, is owned by the daughter of Charles McGee. Her name is April Flannery McGee. But Charles McGee, well-known artist, sculptor, all those things. He was a professor at Eastern, not at the time that I was there, but world renowned in terms of that culture. Yeah.
So, what was Eastern like for you?
Oh man, I had a time of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing about Eastern, we had dorms like everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Eastern's an interesting place.
Yeah, for sure.
So you appreciated your Eastern.
Yeah. We had great. So keeping it, I guess, PC to an extent. I had great professors. Dr. Peters. Everybody know Dr. Melvin Peters. Dr. Peters.
So Dr. Melvin Peters, world-renowned African-American history professor and scholar, and also another Eastern Michigan grad, Bob Malik Yakini. He's one of his pillars of information and going to. And Dr. Peters, if you ever get a chance to meet him, funny as all get up too.
Yeah.
What was his class like for you?
Man, I had the poetry class with Dr. Peters, so I was kind of quiet. So, but I'm watching everything, just kind of soaking it all in, man.
White folks,
I don't know if you had Dr. Sims, Dr. Clovis Sims. He was another great professor. Dr. Victor Okafor, I think he was even the department head at one point.
Okay.
He was an attorney. I can't think of his name, but it'll come to me. Ronald Woods.
Okay.
Professor Woods. He taught at U of M. But I really took a liking to Professor Woods because he talked about things I was an attorney, obviously, so he talked about Black history and culture from a legal perspective. It's just those was the professors that I remember most. Yeah.
And this experience from there, what are you taking classes in? Were you
history? I was a history major.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. What drew you to be a history major?
I just took it. It's just an affinity for the information, man, and the culture. Just educating myself about things that happened in the past. I think it was a combination of my relationship with my grandparents because I always heard stories of them coming from the South, coming to Detroit, all those kinds of things. And it's an era where even with my mother and her siblings coming up, we talking Motown, all those kinds of things. So I don't know. It just was ingrained in me. Yeah, the interest in history.
Some of that also, like I say, grandparents.
Yeah.
It's going to be a different arc of how you see it and how it's framed. So the history, what was the thought process as a history major? What were you planning on doing? Professor, teacher? What was the thought process?
Oh, man, I thought I wanted to go to law school. But I didn't really know, man. My aunt, rest in peace to my aunt, she encouraged me to go into education, so I ended up teaching.
Oh man!
But
what was that like?
You the young teacher, you the cool teacher, that kind of stuff. So, it was cool. I taught at a small school, it was a small parochial school. So that's the connection coming back to Mother Bettis. So I don't know Mother Bettis personally. I don't know Jerome, but I have met Johnny because I had his son Lester as a student.
Ain't that something?
Yeah, and I knew their daughter Brianna. So shout out to the Bettises and Detroit Urban Lutheran.
What was okay, so you teach it at the school.
Joy Road in Greenfield.
What grade?
I taught high school.
Okay.
I taught high school history. I taught history, I even developed a class, Detroit history.
I love to see the curriculum for that.
Oh man, this was so long ago, bro. This is
I don't even know if you can find it, but I would love to see the curriculum either way.
And I just kind of developed it myself. So we did a lot of. I liked it. I think the kids at the time liked it.
And this is also it's not like Google is what Google is.
It ain't even a cool Detroit.
Go through your you had to really roll up your sleeves
Yeah.
and pull this information from libraries and
almanacs,
and build the pacing
libraries,
charts, and all of this.
Yep. And you got to remember, a lot of people wouldn't maybe remember, at least, depending on the audience, a time when Detroit was like, don't nobody want to live in Detroit. Even us, like, in terms of, I'm probably a little older than you, but like our generation, guys was moving to Canton, and they was dipping.
I love that you speak to that. Hence, a lot of the Detroit is different is from that. Yeah, it was a strong thought process of Detroit, and I mean, seriously, my neighborhood today, as you pull up and, I did a series of interviews. They like, man, all that stuff was outside. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that stuff was outside.
Yep.
And my neighborhood, I believe, is, I wouldn't say the average Detroit neighborhood, but my neighborhood is very common of a neighborhood to come to Detroit. So I believe anytime you come to Detroit is different, you're going to see a reflection
the real Detroit.
of what Detroit can be.
For sure.
And this is not where a lot of people think to themselves, okay, this is where I want to have my wife, my kids, and my dog. No, this is a different feel. And also, I think some of the relationships with a lot of people I know is some unpacked traumas that are associated with some of these communities, these neighborhoods.
Great.
And what has been seen or experienced, like just Joy Road itself, when people hear that, up until shout out KDZ and them, but a lot of people may think in my hood.
Yeah.
I hear Joy Road, I immediately think the Dexter and Joy Road, and I think about that Coney Island, and I think to myself, like, that is definitely a Coney Island that, boy, it's been some strange things that have happened in that Coney Island. You know what I'm saying? But that's what I think when I hear Joy Road. I think other things, but that's like top of mind thought process when I hear it. So it's like some people's relationships with the city have been tough and strained because of that too, I think.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. It depends, I guess, just how your structure was, your family structure, and what you wanted to do, what your goals were. I never thought, let me leave Detroit, let me move to Houston, let me move to some other place,
go to DC or something else. Because also, let me say this in the suburbs. I mean, now as more of the people from communities like mine are moving to Novi and Livonia, some of the same traumas are going there too. So it's not like this is a lot of internal work when we think of what's happens in our community, especially you history major, like what's been internalized through the enslavement and never being addressed from this society and this defeatist like attitude that is pervasive for a lot of our people.
Yeah, it was almost like, to me, a reverse psychology, right? The white flight that happened pre and post riots.
Yeah.
Because like Detroit obviously is a population of 2 million people, and up until the 50s and 60s, it's like the population declines.
And so much, I think, oftentimes back to like real Detroit history facts, and I'm shout out Jamon Jordan and Ken Coleman, great with the histories of Detroit, but that population decline actually begins before the rebellions or riots, however you characterize it. It's just those are like clarion moments where it exasperates what ends up happening. So many of these Jewish communities become black communities.
Yeah.
Pervasively
100%.
on the west side.
Yep. Exactly. Where I was at. Where Renaissance sits, that grounds was Sinai Hospital. A lot of people was born there.
Yeah,
I wasn't born there, but a lot of people were born right there on that property. So yeah, that was a predominantly, from my understanding, Jewish neighborhood.
Yeah. And it transitions over time, and in that transition, like, it characterizes things. So from teaching, how long do you teach, and what made you transition?
I was teaching for 7 years. I decided to get out of that space for a couple different reasons, but I ended up going back to school.
Interesting.
I ended up going to get my paralegal certificate because, remember, I'm interested in law school. So I'm like, let me see what's up. got my paralegal certificate. At the time, I didn't really want to teach anymore anyway. So I was like, if it was a time for me to make a move, that was it.
Because people often talk about, it's so interesting, like when people evaluate schools, they talk about these ideal teachers that should exist. And I do believe back to like a school is a reflection of a community, because it's the parents, it's the teachers, it's the administrators, it's the infrastructure in which what's being taught. It's the students themselves. It's the relationship students have with one another, and the relationship all of those people in this equation have. I think teachers face a lot of the blunt of the responsibility of what people perceive as quote unquote failing schools, which I don't like that term per se, because I often find like Northwestern. It was a lot of, excuse my French, it was a lot of shit that you would think shouldn't exist in a school. But even when, like, I was teaching at Last Chance School, like, now I'm going to speak more in sociology. If you're going to remain in communities like mine, I sat one day and they were talking about, just from looking at the connection of a person's, of these three fingers, what drugs they using. Now, to have like a 45-minute conversation about whether you're on heroin and what strand of heroin you on, whether you're on crack, whether you're on whatever like whatever form of ecstasy you're on, like, to have that discussion for that long in what should be an English class, you may think this shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But if you're going to live in that community most of your life, and you're going to be walking down the street and you need to identify something fast, that may be a better lesson than learning Canterbury Tales.
Yeah, no question.
So it's like, that's where, like I say, it's hard to say how do we characterize failing schools when they're reflections of community. You know what I mean? And it's like society itself is failing because of the lack of access to certain opportunities, which creates people to get into like these symptoms of what I consider like healthy paths to quality of life that we've seen. Hence what, crime and like strange socializations, outbursts, traumas, like, and if you're going to be in communities like this, you got to have a good understanding of how to socialize around it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like, you can learn all this English and arithmetic, but it may be better to know what drug cuz using.
Yeah. I don't even know. I couldn't imagine now. And it probably was wild when we was kids. It
was extremely wild.
Yeah.
I mean, from at North,
we was in it though,
and I was in it. I mean, it was drug sweeps, weapon sweeps, but it still was so many opportunities because I was a kid that chose a nerd path that ended up in debate club and DECA and all these other things. So like I believe that it was very much like a lot of life for me. Hence, this quote unquote failing school by most measurements of most other people was a very successful school for me because it gave me an opportunity to make a choice of like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do this.
Right.
Whereas if I'd have been at a school that was maybe more sheltered per se, I probably would have chose all of the wrong things to do more so.
Okay. Yeah. So I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? I needed to be, I mean, I was that kid. I started at King in the math, science, and applied technology program. Ended up at Northwestern. At King, like I'd often say, I was like Bishop at King. I was like Urkel at Northwestern. Because to be Bishop at Northwestern,
it took a lot. Yeah.
It was levels of things that I wouldn't even get close to.
You was like a cube blowing off the book. If you,
Yeah, it was like,
yeah.
oh, well, it's time to do
Yeah,
it's time
I ain't
to
been here in a while.
because they tripping.
Yeah.
This ain't even a level. I mean, even I want to say like my second day, it was so many different things. My second day as we was in radio TV, and I was so grateful for radio TV and everything. Like one of the student aides, it was like damn near like a class in how to cut up crack rock so that you can beat somebody that's buying from you and cut it into more with less crack rock. And I'm like, this is a different type of school.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to add to this conversation.
Right. No, I mean, Mumford had metal detectors. I don't think that was even a thing in most schools in the 90s. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
and it's these types of socializations depending upon what community you're going to be in. And hence, this is where I often speak to sociology. And if people know what sociology is, it's the studies of societies. But most sociologists can say, okay, I can ask you 3 questions and almost tell you the rest of your life. It's like, did your parent, what's the highest amount of education both your parents received?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Did they own their home? And what's the highest amount of education you've received?
All right.
Those 3 questions can almost define where you're going to be at in social strata, and it bothered the hell out of me. That's why I started studying it more. And most of that stuff rings true, which is so many other factors that go into all of those things.
Absolutely.
But that's real.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective as a teacher, I think it was a little bit different only because those kids' parents, most of the time, were paying tuition.
And I was going to say, but back to the parents' perspective and
involvement.
But I still just, in general, being a teacher, I was going to say, back to the root of this question, I got on my soliloquy as people say, I talk more than my guests.
It's insightful, though.
But I like to talk and unpack more of this idea of failing school, because I think it's just not a clear judgment, but also the passion to be a teacher. What was your journey waking up where you like, I want to break away from this? Where was your presence of mind there? When did you know it's like, I don't want to be in a classroom? And did you feel as though you needed to be at a certain level of commitment to be a teacher as a teacher?
So there's a couple things. I was, because it's a smaller school and they had such a need for teachers, especially that look like us.
Black male.
Yeah. They kind of, I had a degree. I didn't have no experience. I hadn't even student taught. So I didn't remember it was a time when, I don't know if you remember, but excuse me, it was a time when I think George Bush was president, Bush 2. And it came, they came out with this thing called No Child Left Behind. Yeah. So you had to be a certified teacher. So, and I'm going to take a step back. So I graduated from Eastern 2002, 2003. And I met at Eastern my ex-wife, my wife at the time. I wasn't married at the time, but she became my wife.
Girlfriend that becomes wife.
Yeah. But she had gotten pregnant. We walked across the stage expecting twins. So this is 2002. And that was the motivation to do something.
And I gotta get serious.
Yeah, I gotta work. I gotta do something. And the opportunity came, and that's really what prompted me.
Connected you to teaching.
Yeah, it wasn't. If I'd be lying if I said it was, some level of, just like
passion or something.
Compelled to do this, and I want to do this. But over the course of me being there, I took a liking to it. I built some great relationships from it. Probably more close relationships than I should have. But nothing that, I would be ashamed of, or nothing that I would be, like, I can't talk about this or I can't talk about that.
So when you say close, do you mean like you were more intimately involved in the success of like the programs, the kids, the teachers?
Just the students. Yep. I got relationships with students that I had then, even now today. Yeah. So I think that, the lines get blurred, especially when you talk about stuff that goes on. Like I've been seeing a lot of stuff on social media with like coaches and students, especially like female students and stuff like that. So it's a lot of weird dynamics that you like, and I don't look right.
Yeah.
So a lot of that would come across my way because I was so young. And I'm talking about I'm in a classroom with, and I'm just being like
honest.
Yeah, 100%. I'm 25, 26, 27. It's, 17, 18-year-old girls, right? 17, 18-year-old guys. So they kind of think that you're equal.
And they're more like in a brother capacity.
Yeah.
And also just in the same dynamic where in our community, it's like sometimes you want a mentor that's cool.
Yep.
Because your parents are your parents. And even sometimes
or maybe not
being cool, your parents are, and when I say your parents are your parents, it's like, if you 16 and you get caught with some weed, your parents may act like you're gonna start smoking crack tomorrow. Whereas probably that mentor that's 25 gonna be like, look, you don't need to be chiefing, but you ain't about to pick up the pipe.
Yeah.
That's more so.
And I'm not gonna participate in your chiefing. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not gonna support it, but I'm also
not gonna enable it.
Go to where your parents will go to the level of where punishment.
I'm not gonna be so dogmatic about it or so like over the top about the experience that you having that I overreact.
Yeah, like I'm gonna send you to counseling.
Nah. So and over time that school it had issues financially because it was supported by the Lutheran Church. That's a whole nother conversation, right? We grew up in a time where it was Catholic schools, Lutheran schools, stuff like that within the city of Detroit. Now you don't have none, right?
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to some of
I think the charter school movement.
The charter school came through. Yeah.
Because when charter schools exist and you have boards and they're connected to colleges, the thought process is obviously the kid gets into college.
It's about
so many things change because of the money.
Yeah, it's about that. And so all of those things just coupled with the fact that it was just an opportunity for me to move forward
and take care of your family.
Yeah.
So now,
and, teachers ain't getting paid a whole lot neither.
Yeah, they're not
at that time. Maybe it's different now, but that's all of those things. And by this time, I got 3 sons. So all of that. I'm married with a mortgage and 3 kids. I ain't even 30. So
that's a lot. All right. So now let's get into that reality. How are you balancing that?
Yeah.
Because that's some adulthood. Like you fast forwarded the video on adulthood fast.
Yeah.
Because you still got homies that's like, they may stay up till 4 a.m. and then go
getting it in. Yeah. They getting it in. Yeah, for the most part. But most of my friends, man, I love, and they all were responsible individuals.
And I'm not saying necessarily, I'm just still saying just back to culture of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, overall.
Overall, if you're 26 with 3 kids, a wife, and a mortgage, that's a whole different play out of the other 26-year-old that's like, I just got my apartment. And we gonna stay up.
Living in mom's basement or whatever.
Classic. Let's hang out tonight. All right, cool. 3 kids and a mortgage, hang out tonight means 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Whereas,
if at all.
Yes, if at all. Whereas I'm single, just got my apartment. Oh, we going out at midnight.
Yeah.
It's like I ain't seen that at midnight. In fact, I'm just being culturally.
Yeah, that's true.
Stuff like that. That's what I mean.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, as far as all of that went, it was probably I can't say premature necessarily. Very young for that type of responsibility, that level of responsibility, but like just and we can bounce around. But fast forward, I have 4 sons. So my 3 oldest sons are by my ex-wife. My first 2, I had 2 out the gate, so I had twins.
Yep.
And then they're 22 now, so doing well. Both one graduated from Michigan State last week.
Cool.
The other one will be graduating from Michigan. Thank you. Yeah. The other one will be graduating from Michigan State next year. And my 17-year-old, he'll be 18 in a couple days. He's a freshman at U of M. Full ride.
Beautiful.
But then I got a 6-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that management of what that journey is, and then even like I'm sure in that arc, how did you internalize, especially now you built a lot of time with your father in New York, like building a relationship, and you weren't necessarily as present. What was your scope towards fatherhood, and you like teaching and stuff? What was your whole concept?
It wasn't a lot of time. I didn't. I knew my father, but I didn't get to know him until I moved to New York. But by that time, I'm 16 years old. So not that we adults or anything like that or got it all figured out, but you're kind of setting your ways at that point in terms of that stage of your life. You know what I'm saying? So we bumped heads a little bit, but it was not a real conflict of any kind. I had all the questions like, why wasn't you there? Why wasn't you around? Things like that. I think I got, we had conversations. I ain't like the answers I got. And so I just kind of maybe internalized a lot of it. Yeah. And then I knew what kind of dad I didn't want to be. So that motivated me in terms of fatherhood to be the kind of dad that I didn't necessarily have. And my dad, he passed away a year ago, Christmas Day. Yeah. So yeah, but over time, I got to know my father a lot better. I called my grandfather Daddy. So my maternal grandfather was really like the man that raised me. Yeah, along with my uncle and some uncle.
And him being older, so you were using even older, like you were using like older fathering techniques and raising your sons. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I was.
So
I would
had
say
like
so.
a different value.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying, system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like they was like my dad say I can do this, and they was like,
Yeah.
you ain't doing that. You cleaning up the room first.
Yeah, that kind of. I definitely was that guy. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but like my kids played baseball. At a time where we play football, basketball.
Yeah.
And not that black kids don't play baseball, but I think
it's not the same.
It ain't the same.
Yeah.
And I love baseball growing up.
I
made them play baseball.
Yeah.
I was very intentional about that.
Okay.
School the same thing. My kids went to, so I know I'm bouncing around, but when I graduated, I moved back home on Whitcomb. My grandmother is there. My granddad had passed away. My mother had got married and moved to Lathrop Village. So my grandmother's there. So I moved back home because that was home to me with my grandma. And shortly after that, having children and everything like that, I got married. So I got married at 24, and I bought a house. So I bought a house, and this kind of started my, relationship with 6 Mile. And I got such an affinity for just 6 Mile in general because the first house I bought was 6 Mile and Prevost. That's where my ex-wife, she grew up on that block. My kids was raised over there. So it's just a lot of my history that's over there. And then you take it all the way down to, the raw space where I am now. I mean, you passing by Renaissance, where my kids graduated from, passing by Mumford, being at Curtis. It's just all these different connections.
Points of connection.
Yeah.
So now, I guess that jumps me to raw space.
Yep.
And I know that's moving probably real fast in the story.
Yeah.
But even before raw space, what leads you to it more so?
So my youngest son's family owns the building that I'm currently in and the building to the building next door to it, which would be to the west, Too Bright. So 8420, which is where I am, and 8424. My youngest son's great grandfather, and God bless Mr. Mims and that whole family. He had the foresight at some point in time to purchase real estate, purchase property. So just out of my relationship with my son's mother and her family at the time, we were, it was contentious for a while, but then it grew into a place where what y'all doing with this? It was a conversation really. So her business is a accessory store, men's and women's accessories. She also does embroidery. She's a Reiki instructor. She does things with crystals and all that kind of stuff. She could speak more to that, but the building next door to her was pretty much empty. I think there was a lot of just stuff being stored in the building. So I saw an opportunity to create something. This pre-COVID, so this is 2017. So, just made an investment because at the time, so jumping around again, I stopped teaching. I'm in school, got my paralegal certificate, but in the midst of that, I get a job in which you talked about on the last pod with Mother Bettis, logistics. I had a friend that worked in logistics. He got me in logistics, and I worked in logistics for the last 15 years or so. Yep. So
logistics, for people to know, that's basically the transportation industry.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of so it's not just truck drivers, though. Truck drivers are big. It's owner operators, but you have to set up the routes to go, and you have to have relationships for freight. And it's more than just the routes for the trucks to go. You have to, you're going to have trailers, and you have to have exchanges, because like as a driver, I may pick it up in like different, it's okay. Here go a 101 for all you Michiganders. The roads in Michigan, you feel them when you drive up from Ohio, because the weight restrictions in Michigan are higher than many other states in the nation. So like you'll drive on Ohio and you'll be driving, and then you'll feel the kind of in Michigan, because you can have 85,000 tons now in Michigan. So it'll be like different warehouses, and you got to work exchanges, and you got to have the right weights there, because the scales, if you ever seen like this thing that looks like it's a police office, but it's really a scale.
Weight stations.
Yeah, I mean, so stuff like that in logistics you have to be aware of, because if not, the last thing you want is a ticket and you trucking.
Yeah. So I'm on the side. It's third party logistics, but in the automotive industry. So
and that's the other thing. So it's also air freight, it's train freight, it's how you move all of this stuff. I'm speaking from a trucker lens because I was a trucker, but it's all of it together.
Air,
how
rail,
do you
ocean.
get all of this stuff into something to be manufactured? Then after you manufacture it, it's a product. Now you got to deliver it to stores so it can be distributed to where it needs to go. That is the logistics of it. And it's a lot that goes on with that.
And it's a lot that happens in Michigan that obviously if you in that business, or if you're in the automotive industry, you might be a little bit more aware of, which most a lot of us are in that.
I think one of the most shocking things that I learned actually is the busiest port in America is here. International crossing, Windsor Port, because it's that much freight and things that go through, and you don't think like that, because it's like, man, I figured it'd be like LA or like one of them places in Texas or who knows what, but it's so much freight, and hence that's why like up and down, even this Gordie Howe bridge being built will have a lot to do with a lot more logistical transit that happens. So like the awareness of this, and I mean, they're redoing so much over there connected to what the Gordie Howe will be. A lot of people in those communities do not like what's happened, but these are the realities of things.
They I guess just from speaking on the logistics thing, it was a good opportunity for me. I mean, I built a career out of it, like a second career. So it afforded me the opportunity to work for some automotive manufacturers, some OEMs, and also move around a little bit. So post-COVID, I'm in 2017, 2018, we renovate the building, put a roof on it, do some other things, start the business. And, it takes off. It does decent. But COVID hits, so I'm working in the midst of this. But around that time, I decided, I said, well, look, I'm gonna step away from my job. I just, I'm gonna focus on my business. So we talking 2021, 2022, did that, but decided, I got 2 kids and going to college, or in college, because my 2 oldest graduated 2020 during the pandemic. But I got another one that's, in high school. And then I got a young son
that will be
eventually. So 2022 I decided to go back to work, and I got a job, but the job was out of state, so I ended up moving to Illinois. Got another job offer while I'm in Illinois to move to Arizona. So I moved to Arizona for really like a year and a half. So I just moved back a year ago.
Yeah.
From Phoenix to Detroit.
Back to
Never really wanted to leave, but
there's a lot of
I had to
Detroiters
follow
in
the money.
Phoenix now.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely. Everybody in Phoenix from somewhere else.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, it's one of those cities. Too.
Yeah. Philly, Detroit, New York, Chicago. So, but I never intended on like planting my flag permanently somewhere else.
And always coming back.
Yeah, that was always the goal. Yeah.
So now the vision of Raw Space, the functionality. I gave an introduction to it, but what's your vision? What would you like to see more of at Raw Space, and how do you see it being used?
Yeah, we started out with the birthday parties, the baby showers, just the kind of familial gatherings, and I love that. I love that people can come to a place that's nice, clean, feel safe, etc. in the neighborhood. I would like to see it become more community center, which it actually has. I've been able to develop a relationship with some different departments within the city of Detroit. I think I mentioned earlier, Councilwoman Angela Whitfield Calloway, Kim Tandy, all in District 2, the city Department of Neighborhoods, district manager. I was able to get a Motor City Match grant to redo my facade, so we'll be working on that. Yeah, thank you. So we'll be redoing the facade, just something different in the neighborhood. But a big part of my, I guess, success recently I'll attribute it to the relationships that I've been able to cultivate, not just with people throughout the city, but the neighborhood in particular. Bagley, that Bagley community, man, is rock solid.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Shout out to everybody working that Bagley Fitzgerald neighborhood. Yep. Darnetta Banks is one of the grandmas on the Grandma Street team. Shout out Darnetta.
That's what's up. Yeah.
So many others that definitely have poured into that community.
Yep.
As that's one of those communities that definitely has faced the brunt of some challenges,
yep.
but also has some families that have been there for generations. So it's not like other communities, but it's not just gonna roll over. Like you may still see some hood, but it's like, these are some people that you're gonna have a relationship with everything that's going on.
And I think they have, if not the largest, one of the largest like voter turnouts.
Yes.
When it comes to that. And I got to give a shout out to, and we met, I think for a second time at Detroit SIP.
Yeah, Giovanna Watson.
Yeah.
Giovanna.
So she really kind of became, I think, the cornerstone of the resurgence of that strip.
I definitely think that, and Lord knows, she don't like interviews, but I already hear her voice saying something like, "Kari for you." But yeah, we definitely got to get Giovanna back. Love Giovanna, and all that Giovanna Fudge has done there. It's big.
Yep. So all the other businesses as well. Like I think I mentioned April. She's designed Studio 6. Ernie, my man Ernie is Sips on 6. He's got 5,000 square foot bar. It's just Live 6 is kind of the community development organization over there. There's a young lady that opened up a new mocktail bar that's right at the corner of 6 Mile and Prairie.
Yeah.
T-Mo is across the street, the barbecue joint. You got the Barber College. It's just it's starting to
come together.
Yeah, but
more to life. I think parking. More parking is needed. And then
my God, pizza bar. Yeah, pizza bars there. And you mentioned a big thing, I think, and with that whole parking situation, I've even been down to city council and spoke on behalf of like
everybody,
the businesses and stuff like that with the streetscape, man. It's just, and we don't got to get into that politically, but
I mean, for a while it was some work being done when we did our my mom's my first fan event. We were so worried about that work being done on 6 Mile, which anytime construction is being done, it can mess a business up because it's hard enough to park, let alone it's like I can't even drive up to it, so I'm gonna go down the street. Like, that's human behavior. So just being mindful of things like that. And I definitely tip my hat. I'm gonna introduce you to a couple different people.
Okay.
And definitely in the mix of stuff. Detroit is different needs to do something there. But
appreciate
uplift
that.
the project that's happening to 5K. I know that's gonna be a cold day, but
Yeah.
if it ain't so cold, roll up your sleeve.
Hey man, we might get some good weather though. It's been, you know, I think from when we was growing up, it'd be, you know, 10 inches of snow and freezing cold. It ain't like that nowadays. Not for real.
Yep.
So January the 4th, excuse me, it's a Saturday. We're gonna start out at Pillar and Pride. I think I mentioned it earlier. They are at 1004 West 7 Mile.
So
remember the old McDonald's, I think?
Yeah, the old McDonald's.
Yeah, that share a parking lot with them.
Dutch Girl is like
Dutch
down
Girls,
the street
right
from
there.
Or the police precinct, depending upon if you want to.
Yeah, on the other side of Woodward. Yeah. So we will start there. You can run, you can walk. It's really up to your pace. We're gonna try to kind of stick together to some extent.
Yeah.
But it's just to motivate the community to kind of come together and get active. Yeah.
And that's powerful.
Yeah.
So with that, thanks for the interview.
I
Now
appreciate
the classic Detroit is different questions. Very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Ooh, the Toyota Camry. That was my mother's car. So
I'm with it.
Yeah, that's, I'm in New York, so yeah, that's like 90, 98 probably when I come back home. Yeah.
Okay, so you get it. You get a ride coming back.
Yeah, because
driving up to Eastern.
Well, yeah, I mean, eventually, not my first year.
Okay.
My second year, yeah.
Okay. But your ride is at the crib.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, mom's took my grandfather's car because he couldn't drive no more.
Okay.
That's how I inherited mom's car.
Taking the keys away.
Yeah, they
family
took
discussion.
that.
That's tough.
You already know.
That's a tough family discussion. I've been in a couple key taken away situations. I'm glad I am an assistant key taker away. Because boy, keys taken away is a discussion in Detroit.
Definitely.
I don't know what it's like in other cities, but it's something. All right, so where you go? Where's the first place you go with your whip?
Oh man, I probably some girl house.
Okay,
I can't even, or probably to buy some weed at the time or a CD.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, you're the DJ at the end of the fireworks, and it's Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What 2 songs you playing?
Oh man, I think Before I Let Go comes to mind.
Frankie Beverly and May.
Yeah. I think I would probably play something by Dilla, Slum Village.
Okay.
Yeah, just whatever by them. Climax or something like that. Just some Detroit.
There we go.
Yeah.
And we vibing out with that. And then the last question, you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
That's a heavy one right there. After one Detroiter, I just would rename it Coleman Young.
That's the number one name you brought up.
Yeah, the Coleman A. Young Center is right there. K Mac is right there, and I mean, he was that mayor, man. He was that male, just kind of fortuitous. He gonna get it done, kind of guy. I didn't know him personally. I only saw him.
Mm-hmm.
So he was almost like a mythical figure, like
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, growing up. But yeah, I think he was a advocate for this city and for our people. So that would be my response to that. Yeah, no doubt.
And once again, Coleman Young, I'm gonna have to go through the archives to really get the numbers of what people say. But boy, the number of people that say Coleman Young.
Now, if you do it like a born Detroiter.
Nah,
don't gotta be okay.
Yeah,
all right,
Detroiter.
That's what's up. Yeah.
It's you could say Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, fam.
Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.